Hello, everybody. In our series of IEEE webinars dedicated to engineering education, where we invite worldwide renowned agents of change, people who change something in engineering education, I would like to welcome Professor Gary Bertoline, Dean of Purdue Polytechnic Institute. He kindly agreed to talk to us about the transformations Purdue Polytechnic Institute took something like 5 years ago, and they're still going on. So, Professor Bertoline, please, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you very much. Good morning or afternoon, wherever you're at. It's 6 a.m. here in West Lafayette. I think the sun will be rising over my shoulder here pretty soon, but I'm looking forward to sharing some of what we have done here over the last 5 or 6 years at Purdue University. And I have a slide presentation. I apologize for the date. I started on this presentation about a month ago, and I never ended up changing it. So I'm going to give you a background on why we think it's really important that we look at the world differently and that we look at the world of higher education, especially in a different light. And unless you frame it differently, it's very hard to get people to really understand how important it is that we really look at transforming higher education. Higher education in our nation really was developed in the late 19th century and early 20th century, and it was created to train farmers, shopkeepers, factory workers, and office managers. And the world has changed dramatically from that time. The way that higher ed was set up it was very prescriptive, disciplinary in nature, and it was specialized training that worked well back then, but it doesn't work very well anymore. And part of that's the change from industrialization to computing, as reflected in our society, is really not extended into higher education. And so we need a transform education system for our time. And so about 6 years ago, we got a new president here at Purdue University. And I was in my second year as dean, and I went to the president and said that I would like to take our college, which was a pretty large college at the time, but it wasn't doing very well. I think we had about maybe 3,500 students. So it was a large college, of one of 10 colleges here at Purdue University. And I convinced him to take a chance and to do something somewhat risky, to try and experiment with what higher education could really become in the 21st century. And so I'll get into the more details of that a little bit later. So go back to the historical framing, which I think is really important, because as you try and lead change, you really have to spend time convincing the faculty and staff and the leaders in higher education that change is actually necessary. And unfortunately, incremental change is not fast enough, in my opinion. And so this idea of transformational change becomes important. And so I'm going to talk about the historical framing through 4 industrial revolutions. The first one, most of us are familiar with, started in England. It was really around steam and water power. This was followed by distinct waves of industrial revolutions. What's shown there, obviously, is what were called Luddites, who saw the automation, and their solution to that in trying to save their jobs was to actually attack the factories. In some ways, we have the same thing going on currently, not quite as violently as you see right there of smashing machines, but we have quite a few people that are disaffected in some ways because what they have been trained for, what they have been expected out of society is changing rapidly, and I'll talk about that in a second. The second industrial revolution was the latter part of the 19th century, and this is where general purpose technologies such as electricity, internal combustion engines, and sanitation came about. In our nation, this is where our engineering universities and the disciplines in engineering really started to develop. But again, the teaching methodologies developed around that time in many cases are still being used. The third industrial revolution, where most people actually think we are created these new general purpose technologies such as computing, digitization, and the internet. And, you know, again, we think and most people believe that we're basically still in this era, but we've actually moved beyond that into what some people refer to as the fourth industrial revolution. Now we have new general purpose technologies such as artificial intelligence, big data, Internet of Things, automation, robotics, and what we call all things digital. And it is a real fundamental change and shift unlike any other that humans have faced. And that's what we really need to start thinking about and how that should affect what we do in transforming higher education. And here's the key thing. During the first three industrial revolutions, all that was needed was to be smarter than the machines. Machines primarily did manual tasks, and the cognitive tasks were the exclusive domains of humans. The fourth industrial revolution actually challenges this equilibrium. And so the photo that you actually see on the slide here in the middle is the Watson computer. This is the popular show here in the United States called Jeopardy. And the two best Jeopardy human beings got outscored quite a bit by this computer in this show. And what most people tend to forget or don't realize is that photograph is actually from 2011. And so Watson computing and computing like that is now 8 or 9 years more capable than it was even back then. And that's kind of a simple example of how the idea that humans are smarter than the machines is really being turned upside down. And so what we're focusing in on in our curriculum change is what are the remaining human advantages. And so cognitive tasks requiring creativity and intuition to solve problems that require great leaps of logical leaps and of imagination. It's really what's going to separate humans from the machines. There's always going to be demand for skills to program, test, and oversee machines, but that skill set is getting more and more sophisticated. Social skills that require emotional intelligence is paramount, and preparing graduates solely for cognitive skills really would not be enough for the fourth industrial revolution that we're going through right now. So it's nothing less than the transformation of humankind, and it's unlike anything we've experienced before. And so higher education really needs to think about what that means. And so the old literacies, which are still relevant, obviously, reading, writing, and math, are also being supplemented by things that we've defined as data literacy, which is reading, analyzing, and applying information. Technological literacy, which is coding and engineering principles, design principles like design thinking, and then human literacy and a re-emphasis on the humanities, communication, and design. And so we're trying to integrate these things into the reading, writing, and math as well as the core discipline. And so some of the other ones is system thinking, we believe, is very important so that the graduates understand the entire enterprise and what that enterprise is trying to accomplish, and then how these technologies holistically fit within that enterprise. Entrepreneurship, which is taking advantage of the creative mind, cultural agility because of the very global environment that we're working in, and then critical thinking. which is discipline, rational analysis, and judgment, which again is in front of the machines in most cases. And so in our nation, we have something that's called the credit hour, or the Carnegie Unit. And so we have created 3 credit hour courses. Normally we have 120 credit hours in a bachelor's degree. And so what we end up with is basically 40 courses, which are 40 silos of information. And the way we conduct our business in higher ed here is every faculty member takes their 3 credit hour, and they really don't talk to the other faculty. And so this integration of learning is very difficult. So if you want to know anything about it, you might want to read an article called Cracking the Credit Hour by Amy Layton, or you can just Google that and download the file, but you'll have a better understanding of the constraints that we are working under when we confine everything to these 3 credit hour silos, because the credit hour was actually created around 1906 in our nation. And it's one of the most difficult challenges that I have faced and we have faced in trying to change, is everything seems to have to fit in this 3 credit hour silo, and it's extremely constraining to do some of the things that we think we need to do. And I'll talk a little bit more about one methodology we've employed in order to kind of get around that. Project-based learning, hands-on projects are integrated throughout the entire 4-year learning experience of our students. They are in many cases real-world projects by working directly with business and industry. And that we think also is important. So as I said earlier, I approached the president, the board of trustees to approve this. The goal is to become a leading experimental college to transform science, technology, and engineering math education from within, and also be a leader in K-12 educational transformation, which I'm not going to talk about today unless someone would like me to through some questions a little bit later. Our goal is to become a disruptive transformer and incubator for educational innovation. And the basic grand challenge question is, what if you could start over? You know, some of you may have heard of a small college in Boston called Olin College. And Olin College was created about 15 years ago from scratch, and it has one of the top engineering programs in the nation right now. The advantage they had is they could start from a blank sheet of paper. Changing from within is extremely challenging, but that was the task that we took on with the support of the president and the board of trustees. And so I'll start sharing with you some of the details around that. So the first thing we did is we created a vision statement, and that is that we are a transformational college bounded by tradition, and then pioneers are learned by doing and use-inspired research. And so the first step was really changing the minds of faculty and what they see as their roles in teaching and learning. And we did that by a long series of meetings and group discussions, trying to come up with what it is we were really trying to accomplish, because we didn't have a lot of others around the world that we could look at that had tried anything like this. And so we kind of made this up as we went along. But we did get to this vision statement, which I think accurately portrays what it is we're trying to do. So what is the Polytechnic? The first Polytechnic was the École Polytechnique in Paris, France. It's still a great university. I think it was founded in 1794, if I remember right. And the first Polytechnic was really the first attempt at engineering education. We believe that engineering education of the future, or the Polytechnic of the 21st century, needs to go beyond what was created in 1794. And so I'm going to talk about what we think, you know, engineering education should be like in the 21st century, we've kind of taken this Polytechnic idea and rebranded it, if you will. And so we use something we call the T-shaped professional to visually better understand what it is we're trying to accomplish. The vertical part of the T is the depth of knowledge. And so this is the particular engineering or technology discipline that, you know, in the United States, we're pretty good at that, we think. But that's not where the real challenges are in education. We continue to do this. We're using different methodologies, which I'll talk about in a second here. But we also believe that you need to cross the T with the integration of the humanities, math, and science, and true integration. And I'll talk about some of that, but you can see what we hope some of the outcomes are by the true integration of it. And then this is the methodologies that we perform. So the depth of the T are the things that we do to deliver this transformed curriculum, which I will talk about here in much more detail. So what we've done is we've created the 10 elements of transformation. And I'm not going to go through all these. You have the slide in front of you, but what we decided to do is challenge each one of our programs to come up with their method in using these 10 elements that you see on the screen right now to begin the transformation of the learning environment of our students. Out of our 6 departments in the college, all of them took a slightly different route to getting to those 10 elements. We just, every year we measure these, and so this past spring, about a month ago, we are like 95% there. All of our 6 departments have implemented successfully about 95%, give or take, and the departments vary a little bit on where they're a little short on 1 or 2 of these 10 transformational elements. But over the 5-year period of time, we've made great progress. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that all 6 departments did it equally as far as the rigor and how they actually implemented these 10 elements, but at least all of the programs are doing some part of the 10 elements that you see here. And some of the more important ones I really want to focus in on is this one right here. It's called Integrated Humanities Studies. We have worked directly with our College of Liberal Arts here, and we've created a 15-hour sequence, and I'll give you a few more details on a later slide, that all of our students are required to take. And it starts with classical reading, and they are taught by full-time faculty in the liberal arts, and it's been working out quite successfully. Things like requiring internships so that they get real-world experiences. A senior capstone project that's 2 semesters in length, and primarily these are real-world projects that we've worked directly with business and industry. So the students have projects that are actually solving real problems in industry or the community itself. In framing the transformation, this is what worked for us. We had about, I'd say, 20% of our faculty that became what I would call early adopters. And so we worked with those 20%, approximately, I don't know, 30 to 40 faculty that really got inspired by this new vision. And we gave them, release time. We provided them with funding to go out and start experimenting. And that part of the project worked quite well. This idea of finding those that really want to make a change early and giving them as much support as possible. And they did that by doing some curriculum innovation, some teaching and learning innovation, and we allowed them to go off and really start experimenting. But this is where you really need to start for the bulk of your faculty if you're thinking about doing, and that is faculty professional development. It simply takes time and patience, and you have to, put yourself in the mindset of the faculty member. They could be, a successful classroom teacher for 20 or 30 years. And they are successful because the students are graduating, they're learning the material. But given what I suggested in some of the earlier slides, how they go about teaching, what the actual expectations are, and the outcomes that you expect in a course are different. And it takes time for faculty to understand that. We have a pretty robust faculty development program that we have. We have a very robust onboarding of new faculty that we hire to bring into the college because we're growing dramatically, so we're hiring a lot of new faculty. And so it just takes time. You're not going to get everyone, and we still have a few faculty at our college that really haven't embraced this transformation, but the majority have, and that's who you end up working with. But if you look at this overall, we really divided this into 6 areas. We did some curriculum innovation, where we actually created new programs that were much more forward-looking, really helped us to grow the college because we have much more interest from undergraduate students entering Purdue University in our programs. This learning innovation, which really goes back to those 10 elements that I showed you earlier. Modernization of learning spaces, that's really important. We're now getting a new building that's designed around modernized learning spaces. We're doing some things in K through 12, which again, I'm not going to talk about today. Use-inspired research, so we created 6 different research themes. One of which is future of work and learning, which ties in directly with the transformation of learning in the college, and then curriculum innovation itself. This liberal arts, it's called Cornerstone. You can see over here that they have themes that students can get into. So after they take the 2 classic reading courses, they can focus in on liberal arts courses that deal with science and technology and ethics, environment and sustainability, healthcare, and you can read the list there. So there's themes that our students can really focus in on within the liberal arts. And we find that our students are much, much more interested and engaged in their liberal arts courses or general education courses, and we think that's going to translate into them learning those topics much better, being much better communicators, being much more creative and problem solving. So here's an example of one of our degree options called construction management. And they really took a blank page approach to their curriculum. They took their 120 hours and they took a blank page approach. They totally blew up their curriculum to start over again. And you can see by these longer areas right here, they have actually created 6 and 9 hour courses. So this 3 credit hour course that I talked about earlier, and that constraint, they have broken that down. So these 6 and 9 hour credit courses are team taught. That's very different from the norm. But this is an example of just one of our 6 departments and the path that they decided to take in order to truly transform the curriculum. Next year, they will have completed the 4th year, so all 4 years of the curriculum transformation will be completed at that time. Did this work? We think it has. Last May, we had the highest placement rate of the 10 colleges here at Purdue University. We're the fastest growing college at Purdue University over the last 5 years. Our freshman class size is 95% larger than it was 5 years ago. That actually reversed 10 years of declining enrollment before we implemented these changes. We are leading the university in creating this 21st century learning environment. It's actually been named what's called a Purdue Move, which is a president initiative. So he sponsors this. We've been able to offer unique programs of study in the STEM disciplines because we looked at our curriculum and looked at what some of the 21st century skills were. We are now getting brand new facilities, as I mentioned before, and we're sharing that with engineering. And we created a high school, but again, I'm not going to say too much about that. So it's been pretty successful. The challenge, though, as a leader is to really stay focused on this. It's very, very easy to give up. You have to have a very positive outlook, I found out. You just have to, really believe that you're doing the right thing and stay on message. You have to have a lot of patience. You really have to have emotional and physical stamina to stand up to all the challenges that you're going to have. At the beginning, I had faculty stand up in public meetings and basically say that well, they did. They said, "You're destroying this college," and it was hard to stand up there and listen to those things. But eventually, things started turning around. The other thing as a leader and even faculty, you have to be able to deal with ambiguity and doubt because we were making this up as we go, as I kind of said before. And that's very, very hard to manage at times. But if you believe you're doing the right thing, it helps you get through that. But that was a hard one. Faculty have a hard time with ambiguity and not really knowing what the map was. I kept on being asked, well, what do you want? What exactly do you want us to do? And it's like, well, I didn't even have all the answers. I didn't really want to say that in public too often, but it's like, help me. I mean, we will get there, and we will work together to figure out exactly what this college is going to look like here in 4 or 5 years. The other thing that I would suggest, and I made some mistakes on this, because as I said earlier, we had declining enrollment in this college for a while. Do not use crisis as a basis for change. Really use this as an opportunity to become much better. And it has worked out for us. It really ended up being a huge opportunity. But this idea of, we have to change because the world is crashing around us does not work. It's not a great way to go about with change. So look for ways of being positive and looking at this as an opportunity to be much, much better. And that's what we found to be very successful. If you want to learn more, these are the recommended readings that I suggest. Now, this is very U.S. based, but I think there's a lot that you can learn from this. And so I've listed, these are our core readings, if you will, in our college. And we've taken a lot from everything that you see in these particular books. And we've used it as a baseline, if you will, for some of the things that we've done. And so that's pretty much what I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions or back up and look at some other slides in more detail or whatever you would like at this point.
Professor Bertoline, thank you very much. That was very, very interesting, and we have compiled some questions here. First of all, it's really admirable, and I like in one of the last slides when you said emotional stamina.
Yeah.
It's really when nobody believes and everybody's in doubt, and as you said, ambiguity and doubt,
Yes.
because no one has gone this road before, and This is the disadvantage of being the leader,
Yes.
because it's a minefield and a lot of pits and pitfalls. So it's not easy, and this is something we forget: emotional stamina in the whole process. And somebody to be the like lightning rod, somebody to be the one to attract all the complaints, all the dislikes and disappointments. And as you said, there are mistakes along the road. um, okay, here are my questions. Um, so basically, did you look at any other institution in designing your change? Did you have some models, role models, or at least say, no, we don't want to do that?
Yeah. Yes, we did. I mentioned Olin College earlier. We actually brought them in as consultants. But what we found out quickly is that, and they freely admitted it, uh, um, after they had worked with us for about a year, they said that we were taking it even further than they had taken their curriculum transformation. So they were helpful. That gave us a lot of confidence that we were on the right track, because they said that they fell short of some of their aspirations, if you will. And so Olin College was a big one. We looked at Carnegie Mellon. They'd done some really unique things when it came to computing and computer science. There's another small university called Harvey Mudd, which is a pretty progressive engineering, liberal arts kind of college in the Los Angeles area. So we went out and looked at various universities that were kind of deemed as progressive, and that helped us. It gave us at least a starting point for our efforts, but we also wanted to do what we thought was right for our situation, and so we quickly took that as a baseline and then built from that. We challenged our faculty to really look at what they could do and be as creative as possible.
Maybe a strange question, but you said you took professors from Olin to be your consultants.
Yes.
What did you want to get from them?
Well,
what was their assignment?
Yeah, so first of all, we asked them to come in and do some professional development with our faculty. And so things like team teaching, which they're pretty good at. They did some integration with liberal arts and engineering. And so we asked them to talk about, because there's some methodologies involved in things like team teaching. Team teaching isn't, I'm going to teach for 4 weeks and then you're going to teach for 4 weeks and you don't talk to each other. Team teaching in the real sense that we're talking about is it's a true collaboration where both faculty, or even if it's more than two, which we do, that you work before the class starts, you figure out exactly what you're trying to accomplish, but the faculty are involved almost every day instead of just taking a piece of it. And so it was just raising their awareness of what had worked in a place like Olin. And then what we did is we brought them back in about 6 months later, and we shared with them what we were going to do. And so they talked about, from their experience, they didn't think that piece would work, or they would say, yeah, we've done that, that works very well, or they said, we've never done anything like that, it sounds like it would be something of great benefit. And so we had that second round where they come back and talk to us about what we were proposing, and then we brought them back a third time and we showed them some of what we actually did, and that's when we got the comment, you've gone well past what we have done at Olin College. So it wasn't a one-time event. We actually engaged them for about a year's period of time. We also sent, we also sent faculty to Olin College quite a few of them just to visit and see what they were doing.
Are there any schools that are now following you, coming to see what you do, or ask you to consult them?
Yes. So I have the University of Wisconsin is coming here in about 2 weeks because they want to know what's going on. I was asked to go out to Boston College about 3 weeks ago. They're actually starting an engineering program. Boston College is a pretty good university here in the United States, but they don't have engineering. They want to add it. And so they asked me to come in, and I spent a day with them, and I gave them my thoughts on if you could start an engineering program from scratch, what might that look like? They've now asked me to serve on an advisory board as they develop this. And so there's a number of universities now that are now starting to approach us. Mm-hmm.
You said that after 10 years of decline in enrollments, now you are you changed the sign of derivative.
Yeah.
Why? Why do more students want to go into your school? What is the bait?
Yeah. Students talked, well, let me back up. I actually, one of the things I did is I created a marketing group in our college. That marketing group really helped us to sell the idea, both internally and externally. You can spot our students on campus pretty easily, especially on Tuesdays. We have named Tuesday Techie Tuesday. Every student gets a T-shirt, and there's a real pride in our college right now, and that gets spread across the campus. And so we've kind of raised the awareness of what our college is about. That's number one. The other thing is we've added new programs that are very, very attractive to this generation of students. So, and these are undergraduate programs. We created an undergraduate program in cybersecurity, robotics, game design, UX, and many others. So there's what we did is we took our base disciplines in the engineering technologies or the computing, and we actually created specializations. And those specializations are in very, very high demand, and that's why we have the highest placement rate. Because these students go through these programs and they get the base, knowledge of engineering or computer science, but they go very deep into a particular area that's of high demand in business and industry. And so that's attractive to the industry, but it's also attractive to students and parents when they see these kinds of programs. So it's now becoming, I don't know, it's self-propelling. It has its own momentum at this point. I mean, our applications for this coming fall of 19, when we start our next school calendar year, our applications from the previous year are up 125%. That's an incredible amount, given that we have seen all this growth already. And so we're now having to cap all of our programs and deny thousands of students entry into our programs. We're trying to figure out now how to grow even more, and we're working with the university on how to do that.
I see. What would you say is the most important factor to change mindsets of teachers, to motivate them to undertake a change in the way they teach?
Well, this is going to sound a little I'm not sure you'll understand this, touchy-feely kind of thing. You really need to get to their hearts. Okay, what I found out is, and I think this is true of most faculty. They actually, most faculty like teaching. I mean, we're at a research-intensive university in this country, okay? Research is extremely important, but most of our faculty really like teaching. They like interacting with students. And you just have to get them to the point where they understand that if they make these changes, they will be much better teachers. The students will like what they're doing much more. And that's what you need to do. You just need time for them to understand that you're not challenging whether they're a good teacher or a poor teacher. You're trying to help them become an even better teacher. And there's a part of that is trust. That's why I said this, taking this negative approach to change, you break down trust, and then it's very, very hard to recover. And so unless you have some level of trust, where people will allow you to take chances where their minds are open enough for change, that just takes some time. I spent a lot of time one-on-one with faculty. I met with every faculty in my college one-on-one, and I listened to them mostly. I didn't say a lot. I just wanted to see where they were, and I did this about the second year into the transformation. And you know, I heard a lot of things that really helped me to move forward. And so the leadership really has to be engaged in this too. If they just step back and think this is going to happen, it won't. The faculty are busy. They don't really know what they need to do in many cases, except the early adopters, which I mentioned earlier. But they normally don't end up being leaders because they aren't in a position of leading. So your leadership team really has to be dedicated to this. And we've spent a lot of time actually with leadership development on our leadership team on how to deal with this.
Yeah, the things start at the head, at the top.
Yes.
One of the last questions, if you would be in a situation to do this once again for another institution, and you have very, very little money.
Yes.
So what can be done?
Well, if you actually look at that one slide, it doesn't take a lot of money to do what we did. Let me just back up here quickly if I can get it. Those 10 elements, the 10 elements actually doesn't take a lot of money. It's more about, I guess I went back too far. It's really about changing the teaching methodologies. And the one thing where money did help was I could bring in faculty during the summer and pay them a little bit extra to get some of this done. So, you know, the money did help to a certain extent, but at the end of the day, it actually doesn't take money to do those 10 elements. It's a matter of bringing the faculty up to speed. Even if you only have a little bit of money invested in faculty development, that's what I would suggest. Or find a little bit of money that you might have in the system and use it for faculty development. And whether it's these 10 elements or something else, that's what I would suggest. But at the end of the day, it didn't cost that much money to actually implement this. It was used in other ways that we did to build up the program. I started the marketing department and things like that. I don't want to underplay it. Money can help, okay? And one of the best things that happened to us is we got a great external validation of our efforts when a large foundation gave us some money to help us to do this transformation.
Okay, questions? Samo mi recite, pa ću ja ponoviti. Aha. My colleague noticed that you have oral communication in the first semester.
Yes.
Why and what is it?
Well, so one of every one of our students are required to take what we call Tech 120. It's shown right here. And in Tech 120, they are given an open-ended project to solve. It's a freshman, it's a first class they take. It's a team-based course. They're given a problem and they have to solve the problem. But within that, they have to make multiple presentations on their project, okay? And so they have to communicate what their solution might be. They also have to work in groups. They have to be able to communicate well between members of the group, and that's why we have communications very early. And we work with our College of Liberal Arts, who teaches the communications course, and they actually work directly with the faculty that are teaching in this Tech 120. This actually, it's a design thinking course. And we have a very tight integration between communication and design thinking. And we show the students and give them the tools so they can be much better communicators in their group and communicating their solutions.
Okay. Other questions? Okay. We are at the end, but just one clarification. One new term that I wasn't aware of is use-inspired research.
Yeah.
Could you a little bit explain this?
Yeah, so this comes from a book that's titled Past Year's Quadrant. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. And if you'd like, I could send you a paper on it. And it describes our research, and we call it use-inspired. Sometimes it's called application research or applied research. We just use the term use-inspired because it's not just purely an application of research. So the more traditional idea around applied research, use-inspired is more closely aligned with this idea of design thinking, where you really look at the user and what their needs are. So that's a term that we've adopted. And again, I'll send you something that really will help you understand that better if you would like that.
Please do. Thank you so much for being with us. It was very, very interesting, and I think that I will be using this recording to teach some faculties that asked our assistants to help them think about transformation in their institutions.
Sure.
I think this will be the starting material for them and discuss. Because as you said, those 10 elements and many things you said, they don't actually require money,
Yeah.
but they do require decisiveness on the management level.
Yes, it does.
And some kind of a long-term commitment.
Yeah.
And this is going to be excellent introductory material for these discussions.
Good.
Thank you once again in the name of all of us, and hope to have the opportunity to meet you in person, but also to listen to your talks in the future.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for inviting me. You have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.